big that culet is. All of these things had to happen at the same time. The Hope Diamond is now in its 50th anniversary at the Smithsonian. In the celebration of its 50th anniversary, they decide to take it out of its original Cartier mounting, the Cartier setting that Harry Winston had 50 years ago and donated to the Smithsonian. Very rare that the stone ever comes out of that mounting. You always see pictures of the Hope Diamond with all those fancy shaped diamonds around it and the diamond necklace. That's the old Cartier piece. So, in celebration, they take the stone out. They mount it loose, a four-prong little holder, loose in the display at the Smithsonian. That's point one. Point two, the Wittelsbach comes out of nowhere, gets purchased at auction in 2008. Lawrence Graff buys it, recuts it, calls the Smithsonian and says, how would you like to have it on display for 8 months? Of course, Jeffrey Post says, no, we don't want it. No, he says, of course we want it. It's the second largest fancy deep blue diamond in the world. It's got all this history. It would be terrific. So, with that, all of those things happening at once, Jeffrey Post says, well, he knows that the Smithsonian is not just a museum to display stones. It's actually a working scientific laboratory. And so to get those two stones together at the same time, what a tragedy it would be if no one looked at those two stones at the same time and determined whether or not those two stones were ever once part of the same diamond crystal. So he invites 9 people, to come down to the Smithsonian on a night 5 or 6 days before the Wittelsbach goes on display to determine once and for all whether these two stones were in fact brothers or sisters. So he invites, from the GIA, he invites PhD Wu Yi Wang, who's in charge of research in the New York Gemological Institute of America laboratory. He is an expert in spectroscopy, infrared, UV, visual, and phosphorescence spectroscopy. And we want to do all of those tests on both of those stones to see if they are similar or exact or not at all. John King. John King is in charge of quality control. John has been a diamond grader forever at the GIA in New York. He has seen all of the big stones that have come through. Anytime you see an auction catalog with a really important diamond that has come through the GIA for a diamond grading report, he has seen. And in 2008, before the Wittelsbach was pictured for the Christie's catalog, it came through the GIA lab. And you'll read about that in the Roskin Gem News Report. I'm going to leave that part of it out. You've got to get a little bit of fun stuff to read about for that. But John's going to look at this. He's going to look at the Wittelsbach-Graff, which he also graded. But now he's going to be able to look at the Hope, which he also graded, both at the same time, and see how well they did as far as calling the Hope Diamond a fancy deep grayish blue and the Wittelsbach-Graff a fancy deep blue. How close were they on color? They very rarely get a chance to see two stones like that side by side. So he's down there for that. Robert Weldon, he is GIA's top photographer. He's going to catalog these two stones. He's going to take the glamour shot of the Wittelsbach-Graff and the glamour shot of the Hope, and of course the glamour shot of both of them side by side. From the Smithsonian, Eloise Gaillou. Eloise is a postdoc. Her specialty is in spectroscopy. Her major focus on this night is going to be the phosphorescence spectroscopy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Jeffrey Post, of course, the curator and our host for the evening. He's going to keep us all sort of herding cats at this point. He's going to keep us all focused, and he wants to be out by 10 o'clock. And the only way that we can look at both stones, of course, is when the public leaves. So we can't even pull the Hope Diamond from the display until after 5:30. So we've got from about 5:45, maybe 6 o'clock on, and Jeff wants us out by 10 o'clock. It didn't work, but he did good. Chip Clark, the photographer for the Smithsonian, who had been there for decades, and if you go through the gem show, you'll see posters from the original Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, the TGMS, which happens in about a week from now. And a lot of those poster shots were done by Chip. A lot of those mineral specimens are at the Smithsonian. Chip was there that night to take the glamour shots of both stones, both singly and both together, as well as get the photograph, the digital shot of the two diamonds phosphorescing. Now, let's stop now and talk about phosphorescence. The Hope Diamond, or many blue diamonds, will phosphoresce, which means when you put ultraviolet light on a diamond, especially these, when you put ultraviolet light on a diamond, it will fluoresce, it'll glow. The electrons inside the structure of the stone cause light to be emitted. A lot of diamonds will fluoresce blue. So if and some people like that, some people don't. But if you go into a discotheque that has black lights or something like that, your diamonds will glow blue. That's fluorescence. When you take the ultraviolet light away, if the stone still glows, that's phosphorescence. With the Hope Diamond, it phosphoresces a brick red. One of the stories that they tell is when they first determined or discovered the phosphorescence of the Hope, that somebody was actually holding it, and when they took the UV light away and the stone started to turn brick red, of course we think of heat when we see red, and so they thought it was going to be hot and actually dropped the stone. That's the story. I don't think it's true, but that's the story. Anyway, Chip is there to take a photograph of the phosphorescence. Does the Wittelsbach-Graff phosphoresce the same or similar or different than the Hope? And he's going to take that shot. It's going to be about a 25-second to 45-second exposure. He's the expert on it. He's taken pictures of the Hope Diamond phosphorescing, so he shouldn't have a problem taking a picture of both stones phosphorescing. Then, from the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory, Jim Butler, PhD, expert again in spectroscopy. Phosphorescence spectroscopy, infrared, UV, visual. He's there. He has tested already all of the diamonds at the Smithsonian, all of the blue diamonds, especially at the Smithsonian. So when he sees the spectrum, the phosphorescence spectrum of the Wittelsbach-Graff, he will know if the Hope and the Wittelsbach are similar, the same, different. He'll know immediately. From Graff, Henry Bergersian. He's the CEO and president of Graff USA. Lawrence Graff couldn't be there, so he sends his second in command. And then John Hadelberg. John is the king of, what do I want to say? He is the king of making fake replicas. He creates the perfect replica of the Hope and the Koh-i-Noor and all of the famous diamonds. And Lawrence Graff has contracted him to make a perfect replica of the Wittelsbach-Graff. Well, he's already made the perfect replica of the Hope, so he wants to see the color of both stones side by side. So he knows how to vary the color of the Wittelsbach-Graff so it doesn't look exactly like the Hope, or maybe they look perfectly the same. But he wants to see those colors side by side.